Kathy Dunlay from New England Sales and Marketing, and I'm here with my friend Lyndsay, who is an incredible sales leader and sales influencer.
That's really thoughtful. Thank you. I am a long time seller, individual contributor, first line, second line, and sales executive. And I've recognized that I've got to make a pivot in my career. And I'm super excited to talk about it with you today and the reasons why and how relevant it is to so many of the people that we work with.
Excellent. So you and I got involved in a discussion the other day that got really intense in a very positive way. And so we just wanted to share that. And one of the things that got us going was we were talking about the current sales landscape and how different it is today from where it was 2 years ago.
Totally.
So let's take a second to set the stage and talk a little bit about today's sales landscape and why it's so different than it was 2 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, the elephant in the room is we've just gone through a pandemic. So the whole way of selling has changed, right? Everybody is remote. But what's also happened is this great resignation, or depending on who you talk to, it's the great reset, or it's the great retaliation, which really nobody wants to have. But the issue that we've got now is sales pressure is always constant. That never goes away. That will be quarterly, monthly, even weekly, and definitely annually. And so that pressure will always exist. But what's changed is this is now an employee's dream. They have the power, and people are leaving in droves. So companies can't afford to not invest in their sellers anymore. And I don't mean invest in terms of money. Money is always going to be king. But do your sellers, do they feel seen? Do they feel heard? Do they feel rewarded? Do you know how they want to be rewarded? That's what this focus is really all about. So it's really going underneath that layer of the obvious. What do we do in sales? We sell product, we make big money. That's generally why people get into sales. Right. It's hard, it's high pressure, but there has to be another piece to it. And a lot of companies have lost sight of that.
Right, exactly. And speaking of that, speaking of numbers and speaking of money, so there are a couple of things that came out in our discussion, and that is we both have taglines. You and I have taglines that we use also as URLs. So I'm www.gettingsalesstarted.com. Why? Because I represent the top of the funnel. And you are?
I am salesbeyondthenumbers.com, because I believe there is much more to sales than just the numbers. And I think your website's awesome, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Same to you. But yeah, and that's another conversation piece that we got really into, which is you represent a part of the sales process that is decidedly not numerical.
Yeah.
Yet it drives the end result. It does drive the numbers.
Yeah.
And we exchange a couple of stories that I want to bring out today because we were just, we both had such similar experiences. And I know that a ton of you out there have similar experiences as well. So a while back, I was overseeing an inside sales group where we had a clear top performer. And I was specifically told by corporate leadership to not let him know because he might stop trying. And I was stunned by that. I had never heard that before. And I thought, what happened here? Did I just fall through a wormhole? Am I living in 1875 before we knew anything at all about like human psychology or how to treat one another? And I was really stunned by that. And, have you had any experiences like that?
Have I? Yes. I mean, we always say your manager can make or break you. And there's too many stories for this chat to talk about my colleagues and friends who have suffered under people that were phenomenal reps and were promoted to managers because they were a phenomenal rep, yet they don't delight in the success of other people. And that's the kind of people you need to promote as managers. But I had a manager who didn't believe in positive feedback at all, and said, if I give you any positive feedback, I'm worried that you're going to think you're doing great all over. I mean, talk about not feeling seen and not feeling recognized for the broad amount of work that I was doing. It hurts to hear somebody be so stingy with feedback. And you and I are both very positive leaders. So for us, that's not a message that computes for us. But I think the big message is, managing sellers is not a one size fits all. And it's same with parenting. Like, you don't parent your children all the same because they're different. You don't manage your sellers the same because they have different needs. They have different wants. They have different things that drive them, and they have different innate superpowers. And today's climate is so fast that managers don't have the time to understand what it is that their reps even possess.
Right.
So that's kind of where I want to dig in.
Well, there's another story there that you mentioned that I'd like you to tell about when you were taking some of your folks, your salespeople, out to lunch, and one in particular thought for sure that, oh, she must want to review forecasts. Right? And what did you actually want to do?
Yeah, so I have a style. I had a manager do this for me once, and she asked me to tell her my story. And I was kind of scratching my head saying, my story, like how I got this job or how I got here or my workings, like what story? She goes, no, your life story. I'm like, oh my gosh, do you have a minute? And so we sat down and I told her my life story, and I looked at her and I said, I'm really delighted that you took the time to want to hear it. But she goes, no, Lindsay, the whole point of this is I want to know what makes you tick. I want to know what motivates you and what gets you out of bed in the morning. And it helps me to be the best manager I can for you. So I've done that with my sellers. And I had one rep who was so funny. I took him out to lunch and he said, okay, I'm ready to talk about forecast. I'm ready to, I'm prepared. And I said, no, I just want to understand you. I just want to know who you are. Tell me your story. And he looked at me like I was crazy. Like, do we have enough time for this? And he got through it. And he looks at me and he goes, we just got to know each other really fast. But at the same time, what was so valuable is I understood the kind of person he was. I understood the kind of life he leads. And if he asks me for something, I understand why. So I just, I really believe that that's something that our sales leaders haven't been able to make time for, but it's so important. And it's so important for companies to recognize that we do need to understand the fabric of who our people are,
right?
Because that's how we're going to get the best out of them.
And do you think that if sales leadership today makes those kind of overtures or makes that kind of position known during the interview process, I believe it will only lead to hiring better talent.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. I talked to a woman who was working for a company, and she told me through her interviewing process, they interviewed her 7 times to make sure that she loved their culture. And they were so adamant about making sure she understood all of the things that were going to be available to her, that when she got there, she felt like she had already got a hug. So she is going to be one of those employees that's going to die on the vine for this company because she loves what they stand for. She loves how they're viewing and seeing and rewarding their employees. They're rewarding out of the box thinking and fresh ideas. And I just think the companies that do that and the leaders that do that will always get the best out of their people. I did that with the organizations that I've built, and my teams and my sellers always knew it was a safe space to try new things, to take risks. And I loved telling their stories and their ideas as theirs, not mine.
Right.
I've certainly seen the leaders that have claimed other people's stories as their own, and that's a huge no.
Right. So those companies that do these practices and believe in these philosophies are going to clearly set themselves up for hiring better talent.
Yeah.
They're going to set themselves up for better performance.
Totally.
And they're setting themselves up for ease of retention. It's just they're not the ones who are going to be concerned as people leave in droves, because they know that they've done everything they can to develop that relationship and develop that loyalty.
Right.
And speaking of stories, there's one last story that I'd like to end on that we call the phenomenal seller, the phenomenal seller who was in this truly unique position.
Yeah.
And I think she's worth telling that little
Sure.
story.
And this is under the topic of meeting the reps where they are. I've coached reps from zero to heroes, and I love, and I'm so proud of those stories. But this rep was a completely other end of the spectrum. And this was a really, really phenomenal seller. She needed no help when it came to selling. She got $1 million commission check before I came on. And so my job as her manager was going to be very different than trying to coach or shadow or micromanage this kind of person.
Right.
And the thing that she was missing was really self-awareness. And she unfortunately had burnt a lot of bridges internally, and she had created a bit of a reputation for herself. And so bit by bit, I earned her trust, and our conversations really changed dramatically to, am I self-sabotaging? And, how can I do this better? And she was parroting back a lot of the positive kind of style that I had. And it really has served her quite well. And what I said to her at the time was, imagine if you didn't have to escalate everybody when you needed something. And imagine if people wanted to respond to you because they liked working with you. Imagine how much more successful you could be. And let's apply that same finesse you have with customers to the people that you depend on. And I continue to watch her evolve. We have a really great relationship, and it's a different kind of management leadership relationship that we've got now. And I'm super proud of the evolution she made. And I didn't help her at all on the sales side, but she certainly needed help. It was just meeting her where she was.
I love it. I love it. So on that note, if anyone out there is interested in continuing this conversation with us, we're going to put our contact information at the end of this video. And thank you so much, Lyndsay, for telling these stories. I know, like I said, we were both very jazzed about our conversation the other day, and enough that we wanted to share it. And we hope that folks out there will hear something familiar and something that they really want to pursue a little bit further. So,
well, I thank you for the opportunity. I was super fired up after we spoke, and I just feel like this is this wonderful reset moment where leaders have an opportunity to really help understand what's the pulse of their sales organization. And my goal is to be the chief heartbeat officer for a sales organization, and whether that's consulting or working for an organization, I just feel like it's really necessary. It's really timely, and I love to see sellers win. I just delight in their success. So this has been really fun to be able to share that. And
awesome.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. My pleasure. So thanks everyone for listening, and we hope to hear from you.